My name is Alara, and my story is tethered to the tide. I was born and raised in the small, windswept town of Port Blossom, a place where the scent of salt and pine mingles in the air, and the rhythm of life is dictated by the ceaseless murmur of the Pacific Ocean. Our family home, a century-old cottage with weathered cedar shingles the color of driftwood and a porch that groaned under the weight of memories, stood on a bluff overlooking the restless gray water. The rhythmic crash and sigh of the waves was the soundtrack to my childhood, a constant, soothing presence that promised both permanence and change. Yet within the cozy, cluttered walls of that house, a quiet discord hummed beneath the surface of our lives. My existence was lived in the gentle, pervasive shadow of my older sister, Lyra. She was the sun, brilliant and effortlessly warm, her laughter a melody that seemed to make the world tilt in her favor. She moved through life with an innate grace, collecting accolades and admirers with an ease that always left me breathless. In the loving, if misguided, eyes of our parents, Lyra was a masterpiece, a reflection of all their hopes and dreams. I, on the other hand, was the moon, my light softer, my presence often overlooked. My quietude was mistaken for disinterest, my introspective nature for aloofness. My passions for vintage books, for the delicate art of pressing wildflowers, for the quiet solitude of walking the misty shoreline at dawn, were deemed quaint but unsubstantial. They were hobbies, not ambitions, whispers in a world that, in our parents' view, celebrated the loud and the luminous. It wasn't that they were unkind. My parents, a retired fisherman and a part-time librarian, were good people with hearts full of love. But their love was filtered through a lens of conventional expectation. They had a blueprint for a successful life, and Lyra, with her business degree from a prestigious city university and her polished, confident charm, fit it perfectly. I, with my part-time job at the local art gallery and my quiet, unassuming dreams, was a puzzle they couldn't quite solve. Their praise for Lyra was a constant, radiant beam, leaving me to navigate the penumbra, searching for my own small patch of light. Their criticisms of me were rarely direct, more often couched in concerned suggestions or disappointed sighs, but each one felt like a small, smooth stone dropped into the well of my self-worth, the ripples spreading wider each time. The delicate balance of our family life, already precarious, was shattered the year my father's fishing boat, the Salty Dog, was irreparably damaged in a fierce autumn storm. The loss of his livelihood cast a long, anxious shadow over our home. The familiar scent of brine and diesel was replaced by the stale air of worry. My father, a man whose hands were as weathered and strong as the coastline itself, seemed to shrink, the light in his sea-blue eyes dimming. Seeing their quiet desperation, a silent resolve bloomed within me. It wasn't a grand, heroic gesture, but a small, steady commitment. I began working extra shifts at the Tidal Treasures Art Gallery, taking on the tedious tasks of inventory and framing that no one else wanted. Every fortnight, after paying my modest rent for the small studio apartment above the town's bakery, I would walk to the Port Blossom Community Credit Union. There, I would carefully deposit £500, a significant portion of my meager earnings, into my parents' account. It was a sacrifice made in whispers. It meant forgoing the new set of watercolor paints I'd been saving for, patching my old rain slicker instead of buying a new one, and politely declining invitations for coffee with the few friends who understood my quiet ways. It was an act of love, offered silently, without expectation of thanks, simply because it was what my heart told me to do. But my quiet contributions went unnoticed, absorbed into the family's finances like rain into dry soil. The credit, I would soon discover, was being claimed by the sun. Lyra, with her grand pronouncements and theatrical sighs about the burdens of responsibility, had woven a narrative in which she was the sole savior, the dutiful daughter single-handedly keeping the family afloat. The truth began to unravel on Christmas Eve. The entire town of Port Blossom gathered on the main beach for the annual bonfire night, a tradition that dated back generations. The air, crisp and cold, smelled of burning driftwood and spiced cider. The massive bonfire crackled and roared, a beacon of defiant warmth against the encroaching winter darkness, casting flickering, amber light on the faces of friends and neighbors. But for me, the festive atmosphere was a thin veil over a gathering storm. Earlier that evening, while we were all squeezed into a booth at the Captain's Catch, the town's best fish and chip shop, my mother had begun extolling Lyra's virtues. "I don't know what we'd do without her," she'd said, her voice thick with emotion, her hand resting on Lyra's arm. "She's been so generous, helping us with the mortgage payments every month. Such a responsible, loving daughter." Lyra had accepted the praise with a modest, practiced smile, a picture of filial devotion. I felt a familiar constriction in my chest, a knot of unspoken truth tightening in my throat. I opened my mouth to speak, to gently correct the record, but the words wouldn't come. What could I say? To contradict them would seem petty, attention-seeking. To remain silent felt like a betrayal of myself. Throughout the evening, I tried. Each time I attempted to broach the subject, to gently insert my own quiet reality into their established narrative, I was met with a wall of loving dismissal. My tentative phrases were interrupted, my concerns brushed aside as if they were childish anxieties. The impatience in their eyes, the subtle shift in their posture, told me everything I needed to know. This was not a truth they were prepared to hear. Finally, as we stood by the roaring bonfire, the heat warming our faces while the cold night air nipped at our backs, I couldn't bear the silence any longer. During a lull in the conversation, the only sounds being the crackle of the fire and the distant roar of the ocean, I took a deep breath. "Mom, Dad," I began, my voice barely a whisper against the elements. "I've been helping, too. I've been sending money since the storm." The ensuing silence was more profound than the noise of the fire. My mother turned to me, her expression hardening, the firelight catching the disappointment in her eyes. "Alara, please," she said, her voice sharp with a certainty that cut me to the core. "Don't you dare try to steal your sister's credit. We know what Lyra has been doing for us. There's no need to embellish." My father simply shook his head, a gesture of weary finality that was more damning than any accusation. It was my cousin, Freya, who broke the spell. Freya was a breath of fresh, unpolluted air in our family. A landscape photographer with a sharp eye for detail and an even sharper intolerance for pretense, she had always seen me in a way others didn't. She stepped closer, her expression thoughtful. "Hold on a second, Auntie," she said, her tone calm but unwavering. "How do you actually know it's Lyra sending the money? Have you ever seen a bank statement, a transfer confirmation?" My parents looked at her as if she'd sprouted a second head. "Of course not," my father grumbled, waving a dismissive hand. "We trust our daughter. Lyra wouldn't lie about something so important. She's always been the responsible one." That word, responsible, it landed like a physical blow. The last 6 months of my life had been a masterclass in responsibility. I had stretched every pound, counted every penny, and foregone every small comfort, all in the quiet service of my family. And yet, in their story, I was the irresponsible one, the dreamer, the child who needed to be looked after, while Lyra, who had done nothing, was lauded as the pillar of strength. Just as a knot of angry, hurt words was forming on my tongue, Lyra herself appeared, weaving through the crowd with a bag of roasted chestnuts swinging from her hand. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice a beacon of cheerful oblivion, as if she hadn't just walked into the epicenter of an emotional earthquake. Her eyes darted from my mother's stern face to my own tear-streaked one, and her mask of innocent concern snapped perfectly into place. "Your sister," my mother said, gesturing towards me with a shaky hand, "needs to understand her place. She's trying to claim she's been helping us financially, when we all know it's been you." Lyra's performance was flawless. She let a flicker of surprise cross her face, followed by a soft, pitying smile. "Oh, Mom," she said with a gentle laugh, placing the chestnuts on a nearby log. I'm sure Alara is just confused. She turned to me, her eyes dripping with a cloying, false sympathy. I've been handling things for months, sweetie. I told you not to worry your pretty little head about it. I didn't want to burden you. The condescension in her voice was a lit match to my frayed nerves. Burden me? I whispered, my voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and rage. I have been sending £500 to their account every fortnight since September. And you knew it, Lyra. You knew. Lyra, don't you dare pretend this is some misunderstanding, Freya interjected, crossing her arms and fixing my sister with a level stare. Care to explain why you've been so happy to take the credit for Alara's sacrifice? Lyra's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a tiny crack in her perfect facade. She recovered quickly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. I don't know what you two are talking about, she said, her voice now cool and sharp. I've been helping because, unlike some people, I actually care about our parents' well-being. That was it. The dam of my composure, eroded by years of quiet slights and a single night of blatant injustice, finally broke. Are you serious right now? The words tore from my throat, raw and loud. I shot to my feet, the sand shifting beneath me. You have let them believe a lie for months. You stood there, week after week, soaking up their gratitude, knowing it was my money, my sacrifice. Why? So you could continue to be the perfect daughter? The hero. Freya stepped between us, a calming presence in the rising storm. Okay, let's all just take a breath, she said, holding her hands up like a referee. There's a very simple way to sort this out. Auntie, uncle, did Lyra ever actually show you any proof of these transfers? Bank statements? Screenshots? My parents exchanged an uneasy glance. Well, no, my mother stammered. She just told us she was handling it. We didn't think we needed to see proof. Lyra rounded on Freya, her eyes flashing. You are way out of line here, Freya, she snapped. This is a private family matter. No, I don't think I am, Freya shot back, her voice like ice. I know Alara. And I've watched you bask in praise you haven't earned for years, Lyra. You've been feeding them a story, and you know it. With a dramatic, exasperated sigh, Lyra pulled out her phone. Fine, she muttered. You want proof? I'll give you proof. She scrolled through her photo gallery and then held the screen up to our parents. See? PDFs of the transfer receipts. Every single month. Like clockwork. My mother's face softened with relief as she peered at the screen. But I knew. I stepped closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. Let me see those. Before she could object, I took the phone from her hand. The documents looked official enough, her name, the correct amounts, even plausible transaction IDs. But something was off. The font seemed a shade too crisp, the layout a little too perfect. They were forgeries. Good ones, but forgeries nonetheless. This is a lie. The accusation exploded out of me, my voice shaking the fragile peace of the night. The crowd around us fell silent, their faces illuminated by the fire, their eyes wide with curiosity. You faked these, Lyra. You haven't sent them a single penny. I stared at her, my whole body trembling, daring her to deny it. I would not be silenced this time. I would not let her steal this from me. Freya, who had been my staunchest ally just moments before, took a step back, a look of discomfort on her face. Alara, maybe? She began, her voice hesitant. Maybe we should calm down. This is a lot. The accusation, now public and so fierce, had made even her waver. She wasn't taking sides anymore. Lyra simply smirked, snatching her phone back and clutching it to her chest like a shield. Fine, I spat, my hands shaking as I pulled out my own phone. You want real proof? I'll show you my bank statements. Right now. I fumbled with the banking app, my fingers clumsy with adrenaline. The logo for the Port Blossom Community Credit Union appeared, and then, nothing. The screen froze. A small loading icon spun endlessly. No, I muttered, tapping the screen frantically. No, come on. I closed the app, reopened it. Still nothing. A small, infuriating banner appeared at the top of the screen. We are currently experiencing a system-wide network outage. Online and mobile banking services are temporarily unavailable. We apologize for the inconvenience. How convenient, Lyra said, her voice dripping with smug victory. The one time you need to prove your wild story, your phone magically stops working. Sounds about right. Alara, that is enough. My father's voice boomed, silencing the whispers around us. He stepped forward, his face a mask of thunderous rage. You have embarrassed this family enough for one night. You will apologize to your sister for these disgusting accusations, or you can pack your bags and leave. I will not have you ruin Christmas with your jealousy and your lies. I froze, the world narrowing to the space between his angry eyes and my broken heart. The collective gaze of the town, of my family, felt like a physical weight. Apologize? I whispered, my voice cracking. Apologize for telling the truth? For being tired of being invisible? He didn't need to say another word. He just pointed away from the fire, towards the dark road leading out of town. The message was clear. I didn't wait. I turned and walked away, not looking back. I grabbed my coat from the car and walked out into the freezing night, the sound of the ocean roaring in my ears. I didn't slam the door. I closed it softly, a quiet, definitive click that marked the end of something. Tears blurred my vision, turning the distant festive lights into a watery, meaningless smear. I had never felt so small, so utterly and completely alone. Christmas was supposed to be about belonging, about family. All I could feel was the chilling certainty of how little I belonged in mine. I drove without a destination, the familiar coastal roads feeling alien and hostile under the cold, starry sky. My mind was a maelstrom, replaying the scene at the bonfire over and over. Lyra's smug smile. My mother's disappointment. My father's rage. How could they believe her so easily, so completely? How could a lifetime of my quiet, steady presence be erased by a single, theatrical lie from her? I ended up in the brightly lit parking lot of the Midnight Mug, a 24-hour cafe on the highway that was a haven for long-haul truckers and lost souls like me. The fluorescent lights inside felt harsh and clinical against the soft darkness of the night. I slid into a worn vinyl booth, my body still trembling with a toxic cocktail of anger, humiliation, and profound sorrow. My phone lay on the table, a useless black rectangle. The credit union's app stared back at me, its error message a monument to my powerlessness. We're working to resolve this as soon as possible. Thank you for your patience. Patience. The irony was a bitter pill. I needed proof now. I needed to reclaim my voice, my truth. I refreshed the app again and again, a futile, desperate ritual, as if my sheer force of will could mend the broken network. It was no use. The universe, it seemed, had chosen Lyra's side tonight. An hour bled into the next. The coffee in my cup grew cold. The cafe emptied out, leaving me alone with the hum of the coolers and the weight of my thoughts. Then, my phone buzzed. A message. It was Freya. Hey, are you okay? I've been thinking a lot. If you need a place to crash, my door is open. I'm not sure what to believe right now, but I do know that you have always been the most honest person I know. Let me know. For the first time that night, a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding escaped my lips in a shaky sigh. Freya. She was torn, and I couldn't blame her. Lyra's faked receipts, combined with my technological failure, had created the perfect storm of doubt. But she hadn't completely dismissed me. Her message was a small, flickering candle in the vast darkness of my despair. It was a thread of connection in a world that had just cast me out. At least one person wasn't entirely against me. My parents lived in Port Blossom, a town so small that secrets were a currency and everyone knew everyone else's business. The story of my public shaming would be all over town by morning. I'd only come back for the holidays, hoping for a few days of quiet family connection, of breathing in the familiar salty air. Instead, I found myself driving through the sleeping, Empty streets to Freya's small cottage, my hands clutching the steering wheel as if it were the only solid thing in a world that had dissolved into chaos. When I pulled into her gravel driveway, she was already at the door, wrapped in a thick, hand-knitted blanket, a steaming mug in her hands. The porch light cast a warm, welcoming glow. "Come in," she said softly, her expression a careful mixture of worry and hesitation. I stepped inside, into the comforting scent of wood smoke and lavender. She didn't press me for details or force me to talk. She just handed me the mug of chamomile tea and led me to a squashy armchair by the crackling wood stove. I sat there for a long time, just breathing, letting the warmth seep into my chilled bones, feeling the tight knot of misery in my chest slowly begin to loosen. "I'm not lying, Freya," I said finally, my voice raw and cracked. I looked up from my mug, meeting her gaze. "I swear to you, I've been sending them the money. Every single fortnight since September." Lyra knew. She knew, and she let them believe it was her. "Those receipts, they have to be fake." Freya nodded slowly, her brow furrowed in thought. "I believe you, Alara," she said, her voice soft but certain this time. It felt wrong, the way she was so smug, so prepared. But you have to admit, from the outside, with the app not working, it looked bad. It was like the perfect, horrible storm. "I know," I whispered, the frustration rising in me again, a hot, bitter tide. "But tomorrow, if the bank system is back online, I'll show them. I will get the proof. And I am not stepping foot in that house on Christmas Day unless I can prove that Lyra has been lying through her teeth." Freya sat back, her gaze distant as she considered the implications. "Everyone will be there tomorrow for Christmas lunch," she said quietly. "Your parents, Lyra, all the aunts and uncles. If you walk in there with irrefutable proof, there's no way she can talk her way out of it." "Exactly," I said, a flicker of my old resolve returning. My voice was firm. "I am not going to let her turn me into the villain of this story. Not anymore." Freya gave me a small, encouraging smile. "Good," she said. "You can stay here as long as you need. And tomorrow, we'll hope the digital world decides to cooperate." The next morning, Christmas Day, I woke on Freya's comfortable sofa to the sound of gulls and the gentle light of a winter sun filtering through the window. For a fleeting moment, I felt a sliver of hope, a foolish, childish belief that the magic of Christmas morning might have fixed everything. Maybe the universe had decided to cut me some slack. But as I reached for my phone, my stomach plummeted. I opened the banking app, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. The same message stared back at me, a digital tombstone for my hopes. "We're still experiencing a major technical issue. Services remain unavailable. Thank you for your patience." A low groan escaped my lips. I ran a hand through my tangled hair. "Still down," I muttered, tossing the phone onto the cushion beside me. For a long moment, I just lay there, staring at the beamed ceiling, my mind racing, desperately searching for another way out of this labyrinth. How could I prove anything without access to my account? My word was worthless. Freya knocked softly on the doorframe before peeking in, 2 mugs of coffee in her hands. "Morning," she said, her cheerful tone faltering as she saw the look on my face. Still no luck. I just shook my head, accepting the offered mug. Its warmth was a small comfort. "Nothing. I don't know what to do, Freya. I can't just walk in there with nothing but my word against Lyra's. They'll never believe me. It will just be a repeat of last night." She sat down on the edge of the coffee table, tucking her feet beneath her. "There has to be another way," she said, her brow creased in concentration. "What about calling the bank? Maybe their phone lines are working? Someone in customer service could verify the transfers." I considered it, but it felt like a long shot. Even if I got through, how would that play out? "Hold on, everyone, while I spend an hour on the phone with a stranger who will hopefully vouch for me." They would dismiss it as another desperate tactic. Besides, it was Christmas Day. The main branches were closed, and the call center, if it was even staffed, would be inundated. I tried their customer service line anyway, my hopes already fading. An automated voice met my ears. We are currently experiencing unusually high call volumes due to an ongoing technical issue. Please try your call again later. I hung up, a fresh wave of frustration washing over me. Everyone in Port Blossom must be calling, I sighed. I'm completely stuck. I have to think of something else, I muttered, more to myself than to Freya. I cannot show up empty-handed. I sat at Freya's rustic kitchen table, staring blankly into my coffee cup, feeling utterly and completely defeated. Every path I considered seemed to lead to a dead end. My truth felt like a ghost, visible only to me, and I had no way to prove its existence to anyone else. There has to be a way, I mumbled again, turning the warm mug in my hands. There has to be something she didn't think of. Something simple. Freya was scrolling through her own phone, probably looking for news updates on the credit union's outage. When she faked those receipts, I continued, thinking aloud, she was planning for a specific scenario. She expected me to maybe show my app, and she had a convenient excuse for why her proof was in PDF form. But she wouldn't have thought of everything. I picked up my phone for what felt like the 100th time, not to check the app, but just to have something to do with my hands. I scrolled aimlessly through my notifications, my mind a blank slate of despair. And then I saw it. An icon. A simple, unassuming envelope. My email. My breath caught in my throat. The emails. Every single time I made an online transfer through the Port Blossom Community Credit Union, they sent an automatic confirmation email. It was a standard security procedure. Those emails would be stored on a server completely independent of the credit union's internal network. They wouldn't be affected by the outage. I nearly dropped my phone. My fingers flew across the screen, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I typed Port Blossom Community Credit Union into my email search bar. It took less than a second. There they were. A neat, chronological list of emails stretching back to September. Transaction confirmation. Transaction confirmation. Transaction confirmation. Clear as day. Each one detailed the exact date, the exact amount of £500, and the last 4 digits of the recipient account, my parents' account. Freya, I practically shouted, spinning my phone around so she could see. Look. The emails. They're all here. It's the proof. It's all the proof I need. A wave of relief so profound it almost made me dizzy washed over me. It was followed by a surge of pure, unadulterated determination. Freya's eyes widened as she scanned the screen, a slow, triumphant smile spreading across her face. You've got her, Ilara, she said, her voice steady and full of a fierce pride that made my eyes well up with fresh tears of gratitude this time. There is no way she can talk her way out of this. I nodded, my resolve solidifying into something hard and clear. I'm going over there, I said. And I'm taking this with me. If she tries to deny it, if anyone tries to deny it, I will make them read every single one of these emails out loud. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the power was back in my hands. Lyra's carefully constructed tower of lies was about to come crashing down, and this time, I would be the one to light the fuse. As I stared at the screen, at the neat list of confirmation emails, the wave of relief was followed by a ripple of self-recrimination. Embarrassment washed over me, hot and swift. How could I not have thought of this sooner? It was so simple, so obvious. The proof had been sitting in my inbox the entire time. But then I took a breath. Last night, I hadn't been thinking clearly. I had been ambushed, accused, and publicly humiliated. My mind had been a whirlwind of hurt and anger. I was in survival mode, my thoughts scattered and panicked. I was just trying to stay upright in a storm. God, I muttered, shaking my head. I feel so foolish for not checking my email straight away. Freya reached across the table and squeezed my arm, her touch warm and grounding. Don't you dare beat yourself up, she said gently. You've been through an emotional ringer. It's a miracle you can think at all. The important thing isn't when you found it. It's that you found it now. Her words were a balm to my bruised ego. She was right. The timing didn't matter. The truth did. I straightened my shoulders, the last vestiges of despair replaced by a steely calm. Okay, I said, my voice clear and strong. I have the proof. I'm going over there. I'm not going to be angry or loud. I'm just going to state the facts and show them the evidence. If they still choose not to believe me after this, then that's on them. It's not my burden to carry anymore. Freya nodded, her expression firm. I've got your back, Alara, she said. Let's go show them the truth. Pulling into my parents' driveway felt like arriving in a foreign country. The house, with its cheerful Christmas wreath on the door and the soft glow of lights in the windows, looked like a picture postcard of family happiness. It was a cruel irony. I wasn't here to celebrate. I was here to reclaim a piece of myself that had been stolen. I gripped the steering wheel for a moment, taking a deep, fortifying breath of the cold, salty air. Freya gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze, and we walked up the familiar stone path together. My mother opened the door. Her face, which should have been warm with a Christmas welcome, was tight with disapproval. So, she said, her voice cool, you decided to come back. Behind her, I could see Lyra leaning against the hallway wall, a smirk playing on her lips. Come to apologize, little sister, she asked, her voice laced with a triumphant mockery that made my stomach clench. My father stood in the doorway to the living room, his arms crossed, his expression a thunderous wall of disappointment. I forced my own expression to remain neutral, my voice soft. I just want to be with my family on Christmas, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I don't want any more drama. My mother's eyes narrowed, but she stepped aside. As I passed Lyra, she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, took you long enough to come crawling back. I clenched my fists in the pockets of my coat, but kept my face a placid mask. Let them think I was defeated. Let them believe I had surrendered. I played my part, smiling faintly as relatives I hadn't seen in a year greeted me, their warmth tinged with a new, cautious curiosity. They had all heard, of course. The Port Blossom grapevine was ruthlessly efficient. I was the unstable, jealous sister, the source of the Christmas Eve drama. We all sat down for Christmas dinner. The table was laden with roast turkey, glistening vegetables, and all the festive trimmings. The air was thick with the scent of good food and unspoken tension. My heart pounded a slow, steady drumbeat of anticipation. I knew Lyra wouldn't be able to resist the stage. It was only a matter of time before she seized the opportunity to cement her role as the long-suffering victim and me as the unhinged villain. All I had to do was wait. My phone was in my lap, the email app open and ready. It didn't take long. As dessert was being served, Lyra cleared her throat, a small, dramatic sound that silenced the table. Well, she began, casting a sad, meaningful glance in my direction. As much as I'd rather not, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Every eye turned to her. She leaned back in her chair, her face a carefully crafted mask of sorrowful concern. You know, last night was incredibly difficult for me, she said, her voice trembling with just the right amount of emotion. To be accused of lying. By my own sister. I never thought Alara could be so cruel. It was, honestly, heartbreaking. Whispers rippled around the table. I saw my Aunt Carol shoot me a look of profound disapproval. Lyra wasn't finished. I have always tried to do what's best for this family, she continued, her voice thick with manufactured sincerity. Helping Mom and Dad out, never asking for a thing in return. And to have that thrown back in my face? To be called a liar in front of everyone. It's beyond hurtful. Her performance was Oscar-worthy. A tear threatened to spill from the corner of her eye. My parents nodded along, their faces etched with sympathetic pain. You didn't deserve that, darling, my mother said, her voice firm. We have always known how responsible and giving you are. The room hummed with murmurs of agreement. I felt the weight of their collective judgment settle on me, heavy and suffocating. I gripped my phone under the table, my pulse thrumming in my ears. The pressure was immense, but I held my ground. I took a slow, deep breath, steadying my hands as Lyra paused to dab at her eyes with a napkin. This was my moment. "That's enough," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room with the clarity of a bell. Every head turned towards me, some with surprise, others with open hostility. I stood up slowly, my phone held firmly in my hand. "You've had your chance to tell your story, Lyra," I said, my gaze locked on hers. "Now it's my turn." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, here we go again." I ignored her, addressing the table as a whole. "I have been sending Mom and Dad money every fortnight since September. I don't make grand speeches about it, and I don't ask for praise. But when Lyra stood there last night and took credit for it, I couldn't stay silent. And I was accused of lying. Today, I have the proof that I was not." I held up my phone, turning the screen so everyone could see the list of emails. These are my transaction confirmations, sent directly from my bank's secure server the moment each transfer was made. They show every payment I've made to Mom and Dad's account, along with the exact dates and amounts. Lyra leaned back, a lazy, confident smirk on her face. "Oh, please," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Anyone can fake an email. You really expect us to fall for that?" "My receipts from last night were official bank documents," she added for good measure. "They were forgeries," I replied calmly, "and these are not. And if you're so sure of yourself, let's look closer. Mom, Dad, did you happen to notice the account number the money was coming from on Lyra's so-called receipts?" I paused. "Because I can tell you right now, it won't match the source account on your actual bank statements." My parents exchanged uneasy glances. "We didn't look that closely," my father admitted, shifting in his chair. "We just assumed." "You assumed she was telling the truth," I finished for him, my voice sharp but steady. "You trusted her without a single question. But you don't have to assume anymore. You can see for yourselves." I crossed my arms, my gaze unwavering. "Let's go to the ATM right now. You can print a mini statement. It will show the last few transactions, including the source account number for each deposit. You don't need a banking app for that." Lyra's smirk finally faltered. A flicker of panic crossed her eyes before she masked it with indignation. "Fine," she snapped. "Let them check. I have nothing to hide." My parents hesitated. The festive meal was ruined, the family gathering a disaster. "It's Christmas Day, Alara," my mother said weakly. "Must we do this now?" "Yes," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. "We must." Reluctantly, my father grabbed his coat. The three of us left the stunned silence of the dining room and stepped out into the cold. The short drive to the town square was thick with a tense, suffocating silence. At the ATM, my father inserted his card. With a few deliberate presses of the buttons, he requested a printed statement. The machine whirred and spat out a small, flimsy piece of paper. He held it up to the faint light, his brow furrowed. He then took my phone and compared the source account number on my email confirmations to the numbers on the slip of paper. He checked the deposit from early December. It matched. He checked the one from November. It matched. Every single deposit they had received for the past 4 months had come from the account number listed in my emails. My account. My mother peered over his shoulder, her face growing pale. "It's Alara's account," she whispered, the words barely audible over the sound of the wind. "Every single one." It was Alara. She looked from the paper to my face, her eyes wide with a dawning, horrified understanding. "Lyra, she faked those documents." The drive back was even more silent than the drive there. The weight of the truth filled the small car, heavy and immovable. When we walked back into the house, the conversation in the living room died instantly. All eyes turned to us. And then we saw her. Lyra was by the front door, frantically pulling on her coat, her handbag clutched in her hand. Her face was flushed, her usual confident poise shattered, replaced by a raw, panicked guilt. Lyra, my father said, his voice quiet but heavy as stone. We checked the statements. Every single transfer came from Alara's account. You have been lying to us for months. The room erupted in a storm of hushed gasps and shocked murmurs. One by one, my relatives began to gather their things, mumbling awkward, hasty goodbyes, unable to meet my eyes, desperate to escape the toxic fallout. Lyra's facade finally, irrevocably, crumbled. She let out a laugh that was half sob, half sneer, tears of rage and humiliation streaming down her face. Fine, she spat, spinning around to face us all. Yes, I lied. Okay, is that what you all want to hear? I lied. She glared at me, her voice trembling with a desperate, cornered fury. You told me back in September that you didn't want a big deal made of it, that you just wanted to help quietly. So I thought, what's the harm? They already see me as the responsible one. It was easier to let them think it was me. Her words, meant as a defense, hit me with the force of a physical blow. I told you that because I trusted you, Lyra, I said, my own voice shaking. I thought, just for once, you would support me, that you would be my sister. Instead, you used my quiet act of love to polish your own crown. Do you have any idea how that feels? To have your own family make you feel invisible. For a split second, I saw a flicker of something that looked like shame in her eyes, but it was quickly extinguished by her pride. They were never going to believe you over me anyway, Alara, she said bitterly. I didn't think it would blow up like this. My mother stepped forward, her voice trembling. Why, Lyra? Why would you do this? We would have been proud of either of you. We would have been grateful. There was no need for this deception. Lyra offered no answer. She fumbled for her car keys, yanked the front door open, and stormed out into the cold, slamming it shut behind her. The room was utterly silent for a long moment, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. The weight of her actions, and their own complicity, settled over my parents. They turned to me, their faces masks of regret. Alara, my father began, his voice thick with an emotion I had never heard from him before. We owe you an apology. A profound one. We should have listened to you. We should have trusted you. We didn't, and for that, we are so sorry. My mother nodded, fresh tears tracing paths down her cheeks. We have been so unfair to you, for so long, she whispered. And this was inexcusable. I don't know if we can ever make it up to you. But we will try. I promise we will try. I stood there, a quiet island in the wreckage of our Christmas. I took in their words, their remorse, their pain. I didn't know how to feel. A part of me, the wounded child who had spent a lifetime craving their approval, wanted to rush forward and forgive them, to make everything okay again. But another, newer part of me, the woman who had just fought for and won her own truth, knew it wasn't that simple. I appreciate the apology, I said finally, my voice quiet but clear. But this doesn't erase everything. It's going to take time. They both nodded, their eyes filled with a solemn understanding. And for the first time, I felt truly seen by them. Not as a problem to be solved or a disappointment to be managed, but as their daughter. The rest of the day passed in a quiet, fragile truce. The guests were gone, the festive food lay half-eaten. The three of us sat in the living room, the lingering aftermath of the storm hanging in the air. It was not the Christmas I had ever hoped for. But it was, perhaps, the Christmas I needed. The truth was finally out, breathing in the open air. And, for the first time in my life, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was not the bad guy. I was just myself. And that was, at last, enough.